Thanks very much. Okay. I know that you've been sitting for a little bit, so if you sneak out and you need a little bio break, it's fine with me, okay? I know that you also have been here, I guess it was this morning and tomorrow, and you've had a lot of PowerPoint, so I figured I'd just put together my best 500 PowerPoint slides for you guys for the next hour. Does that work? It's only 500 for you all. No, I am Lisa Bodell. I run a company called Future Think in New York City. It's a company that I started 20 years ago. And our job, the leaders that I have around the world, I've got 17 folks. They're in Singapore, they're in South Africa, they're in Frankfurt, they're in London, they're across the United States. Their job is to help leaders like you anticipate and activate change. And what I want to do today is actually help you better embrace change and innovation, but do it in simple ways. And it's no small plug here. My book that's coming out in October, this is my second one, is called Why Simple Wins. And I focused on eradicating complexity because I see so much complexity putting a chokehold on how you work and how your clients work. And I wanted to figure out why that was happening. And here we are, I have all these trainers that go out all over the world to teach change. And I have to tell you, starting a few years ago, they were constantly coming back from engagements incredibly frustrated, right? These leaders were bringing us in to teach change. And the moment we got there, they were the very people that were telling us not to do it that much, right? Teach change, but not that much change. And so we couldn't figure out what the hell was going on. And I started asking groups like you and the other people I speak to, and I travel a lot. I'll speak to about 100,000 people in a year. I started asking them a very simple question to figure out, why is change and innovation so hard for people to do? Right? It's not a new topic. You guys have heard it a million times. So here's the question I started asking everybody. What do you spend your day doing? So just think about that. Your day-to-day. The basic stuff you really do, what do you spend your day doing? No? Actually, tell me your answer. What would you say?
Internal email.
Email? Next meeting? Anyone else? Emails, phone, firefighting. So here's what's interesting. When I would ask this question, what do you spend your day doing? I was not surprised by the uniqueness of the answers, but the absolute consistency of them. So no matter the country, the culture, the level of person in the room, right? What do you spend your day doing? They all said the same first two things, and it's exactly what you said here, meetings and emails. Everybody, right? And I was there to talk about change and innovation. How are you going to do that when you're astounded you're in meetings and emails all day long? So it made me realize the very way that we go about change is often the very wrong thing. We put policies, reports, procedures, governing structures, all those things in place, and all are very important, especially the more risk and compliance adherence you have. But unfortunately, it becomes an excuse for many organizations to not do something or not even try to do something. And so often we have to start by getting rid of things, frankly. Do that spring cleaning, make it okay for us to do less versus constantly adding more, because we become the slaves to the beast that we create. So how do we create that culture of simplicity? And I'll tell you at the end of this, I'm going to share with you how other people are doing it, and you'll be surprised at how easy it is for them to do. So let's do a few things. Let's talk about how change happens. And I think it's not what you expect. The second thing is, what holds you back from doing it? Right? There are things you as leaders do that hold you and your teams back from doing it. It's very human, and that's okay. And then the final thing is, what are some simple things you can do to start that change and innovation to happen internally with your groups and then at your clients? Does that work for you guys? Yeah? I can't hear you. Yes. Fantastic. Okay, so let me put this down. So let's start with the first thing. Just by show of hands, how many people here think that there'll be more change in the next 5 years versus the last 5 years? More. Okay. How many people think there will be less change? We've been through the heat of it already in the next 5 years than the last. Okay. You're consistent with all the other groups around the world of your peers, by the way. No one raises their hand for less. But I'll tell you, with other consulting groups I've worked with, there are a handful of people that will say less. I believe it's more, of course. But what you want to think about is, as leaders, it's not your job to stay on top of change. It's your job to stay ahead of it. So how do you do that? And there are structured ways to do it, and I want to show you how. But the first thing is, for you to be a good leader, is how do you teach your teams and you to keep your antenna up? How do you know if you're good at looking at the weak signals of change versus the obvious ones? We're going to play a game. And we're going to see how good you are at it. So here's the game. It's called In the News. And this is a futurist game. So a little bit about my background. I'm a trained futurist, which is a real job and a real degree that you can get. Right? It's a master's in science. You can get a certificate in it from some of the futuring groups. I have futurists that work for me that actually started the program and teach it at University of Houston Clear Lake. Is anyone here from Houston? Okay, you guys are oil and energy, obviously, is that the practice that you're in? Okay. They do a lot with oil and energy, as well as we do a lot with finance. A lot of people around the world might teach it at Leeds. Manoa's another big school of it. Anyway, it's the structured way of how change happens. And the ultimate thing is we want to produce possible, probable, and preferable scenarios for change. And the reason that's interesting is think about that. There's a lot of possible change, but it might not be preferable change. So possible, probable, preferable. And how we start getting people thinking that way is we give them headlines from the future, and they have to start to think about, are these headlines true or not? Are these real signals of change? So I'm going to do that with you. I'm going to read some headlines from the future, and you have to tell me whether you think they're true or false. Now here's what you're going to do. If you think the headline I read is true, stand up. Give me jazz hands like this, okay? Not like this, but just up, okay? If you think it's false, stay seated, arms crossed, look really angry. Okay, can you do it? Yes, you can. Pivot to the new. Here we go. Rotate to the new. Here's your first headline. Let me read it and explain it, and then I'll let you know when. Here we go. Fitbit and Netflix. They are creating experiences, entertainment experiences based on your behavior. There are 50 people now with specially augmented Fitbits outside of London that are part of this pilot. Right? You can obviously read your locomotor activity, your sleep activity. Now we can read our emotional activity, which means when they have their Fitbit and they get in front of their device or their television, they turn on Netflix and they hold Fitbit up to it, Netflix recommends movies to them based on how they're feeling at that moment. If you think it's true, stand up. Let's do it. Well, we have some not angry people. We have some mildly disturbed people. Okay, great. No, stay standing because you look stupid and I like it. Okay. All right, people standing, you are my risk takers and I love it. And people seated, look at these guys because these are my visionaries, people, right here. And these people are wrong, so sit down, okay? You're wrong. Why are you wrong, though? Why would you stand up? What do you think? Right, it could happen possible. It's probable, it's preferable. These things are already starting to happen with facial recognition technology, all kinds of wearables. But what's interesting about this is how you think of this in terms of emotions and behavior. There's a good and an evil to all trends, right? A good and a bad. Here's what we want to think about. When you typically think about technologies, especially wearables, you're thinking about something like this. It's the nurse practitioner or the doctor who's going in and talking to the patient, and we're giving basic diagnoses, blah, blah, blah. It's me and my exercise. Did I get my 10,000 steps today? It's so much more than that. Actually, it's the guy on the rig, as you probably know. Did he really do those safety checks? Rather than checking a form for compliance, we're going to show it and be able to submit. We actually did these checks and we did them properly. It's going to be the chemist at Dow or Monsanto or at Novartis who's doing distributed R&D in terms of coming up with new compounds and is able to come up with things faster, get them into the pipeline, and get them out to market, because we're able to see and do things together virtually. But there's another issue. While we're saying as leaders, isn't this more efficient and more effective, and it's going to bring us to market and be more successful, what are employees thinking as they're wearing these wearables? Big brother. Who owns this data? Am I really doing what I say I do? We usually aren't, by the way. And am I going to get fired? Right? So there's a very human element to all these things that we recommend. So when you are pivoting to the new, you're recommending these solutions, are we thinking about both sides of them? Where can it really take us, and what does it really mean internally and externally? So here's the takeaway on this in behavior, all this behavior-driven technology. What does it mean, right? Clients and customers will love being able to have it. Customers and viewers, they have new expectations. If I give you my data, you better do something with it and make it personal, but how personal, right? Good versus evil. Okay, most of you got that wrong, okay? So we're gonna do another one. Here's our next one. Let's forget about 3D printing. Let's go to 4D printing, right? 3D printing is just so passé, so passé. Here's what I want you to know about 4D printing. Right now, there's a pilot that's happening between Harvard and the US Army, and they are exploring new ways to use self-assembling objects. They literally can create bridges that can spring into shape. On a moment's notice, boom, 4D printed objects. If you think it's true, stand up, give me the jazz hands. Right? See, you guys are just thinking that I can't do 2 falses in a row. It's basically what it is, isn't it? I know. All right, let's see. This is absolutely true. Well done. All right, how many people here are familiar with 4D printing? A couple are. Okay, fantastic. So as a way of background, right, we start when we talk about, this is basic definition. My apologies if everyone knows this. It's smart objects, right? It's like 3D objects that are programmed to do something on their own. Usually it's simple materials. It can be a simple polymer. When it comes into contact with an agent such as water, wind, heat, some kind of catalyst, it can change over time and self-assemble. So what I mean by that, if you take a look at this, so here's a basic video. This is a simple polymer emerged into, in this instance, the agent is water. And this is sped up at 50 times. So it doesn't quite do it at this speed, although it is faster than it was when this happened a couple years ago. This was programmed to form into a cube, right, on its own, boom, into a cube. So what does this mean? What are the implications of this in material science, in engineering, in manufacturing, in real estate, in cities? And it goes, and it goes. It means a lot of things. It means things like this happen. This is a 5-story apartment building by Winsun in China that was 3D printed. It hasn't even started to be 4D printed yet. 3D printed. How long did it take to 3D print this building? Just shout it out to me. 1 day? Anyone else? Okay, it is 1 day. Correct. 1 day, but 5 days to assemble, so a lot longer, right? 5 days. Now, I don't know, by the way, if the wind blows, if this thing is going to fall down, but the point is it happened, right? So 1 day, so these things are happening, right? That's just 3D printing. Imagine if 4D printing was happening with its pipes, with solar, with energy. What would happen if, and this is already happening, with shoe designers and clothing manufacturers, if Nike, with their material scientists, decide we don't need 200 SKUs, we have 1 SKU this year. Let's go extreme, 1 SKU. Because this 4D printed shoe, when it goes onto grass, it sprouts cleats, and when it gets back in the basketball court, it reinforces its material around your ankle. No more injury. Wow, that's a competitive advantage, all because of materials. Or, right, it's this group outside of Manchester that's engineering concrete that is self-healing. Think of what that does to a city's budget that doesn't have to repair roads anymore because they repair themselves. Or does that put people out of work? Good and evil. Now, here's the other side. What does this mean? It's pipes that never burst. It can unclog themselves, right? It's structures that can be taken down and built up in a moment's notice. I'm from Detroit. That means all that crappy urban infrastructure that's holding that city back goes away in an instant and new things pop up, right? It's really cool. This is adaptive architecture. This is flexible and non-permanent. That's the future of cities. What does that mean for your clients? Just a little side note. You see this? This is 140 pieces printed at once on a 3D printer. Right? It's pretty cool. And it's completely, if I can get it off here, it collapses on a dime, right? Lots of little things happening. What does this mean for you in terms of materials, right? You consult for these kinds of industries. How is it going to redefine manufacturing and how we put things together? Your car arrives in your driveway in parts and self-assembles itself, right? I'm extreme, but I like it, okay? And it goes, and it goes, and it goes. Okay, so this is about the future. How do you get ahead of it, and what does it mean beyond the obvious? Okay, I'm going to give you one more. One more. Are you guys ready? Here it is. BMW has partnered with USC, University of Southern California, and they have a car with over 300 sensors inside. We know sensor technology is a big deal. But this car, its purpose is not necessarily mobility. It's designed to make you healthier. That's its purpose. It's designed for health. Give me the jazz hands or stay seated and be angry. What do you think? Oh, see, now it's a mixed room. People are like, I'm not buying it anymore. No? Let me see. The answer is absolutely true. Well done. It's on tape, by the way. If you got it right, you get an extra bonus this year. That was well done. Okay, it is absolutely true. Why? Here's the car. This is Nigel. It's a Mini. And basically, it does a lot of things to make you healthier. But here's some of the quick and easy things. When you sit in the car, when you drive it, it will tell you how much weight you have lost or gained since the last time you got inside the car. I know, it's a terrible car. It's a terrible car. You put your hands on the steering wheel, basic diagnostics. Does your heart rate go up more in certain instances, like when you pull into your driveway at home or the parking spot at work, right? The venting system can detect level of pollutants and then reroute you via GPS to a healthier route. And it goes on and on and on, right? Massage chairs, they can stimulate your thighs, they can stimulate different parts of your brain. If you wear headgear, all kinds of things are happening. Why is this interesting? Because this, to me, is about the future isn't who you are, the future is who you're becoming. And this is what clients look to for you. You can easily give them outsourced solutions. But to me, rotating to the new is, how do you know who you're becoming, Accenture, and how do you know what your clients are becoming? And what I mean by that is, in the future, car companies, right? They might not even make cars, right? And you're not going to care about a lot of things. In fact, let me go back to this. I want you to think about with cars, right? If they don't make cars, maybe they just make the things that go in the cars. Maybe they just license your part of the car. And in the future, what does this mean in terms of implications for other industries, guys? If the roads are all smart roads, there's no more accidents, right? So we don't really need mechanics. Cars heal themselves because they're 4D printed now, right? You don't care about insurance because there's no more drunk driving. You're not driving the car. You don't care about Grandpa driving the car. He's not driving the car anymore. And it goes on and it goes on and it goes on. What are the implications of the change and how do you stay ahead of it? So here's the question for you. This isn't about cars. This is about new business models. So I want you to think 10 years from now. Here's what Pierre's thinking about, right? What are you going to be doing that you're not doing today at Accenture and at your clients? That's what they want you to tell them, right? What should you be thinking about? Car companies, you know who their favorite partners are in many instances? Cities, right? Public-private partnerships between cities, right? What are the avant-garde things of who you should be partnering with, and how can you bring those partnerships to your clients? Okay, who are you becoming? That's what I want you to think about. Who are you becoming? I will tell you, the people in this room that are going to be promoted even higher are the ones that can tell me 10 years from now who they're becoming. Okay, how does change happen? These are the only 2 slides I'm going to show you that look like graphs, I promise. But they'll make you sound really smart at a cocktail party. So here's how a futurist says change happens. This is how you can identify change. And it's a structured way to do it, right? You think that there's only one way to get to a point. There's many ways. But it evolves in a pretty consistent format, right? You think things come out of nowhere. They really don't. You just choose to be aware of them at certain times, right? This is about awareness and assumptions. That's what change comes down to. So here's the deal. So this is about how aware you are of a trend, and this is how many references or Google hits it gets over time, right? So the more Google hits, the more aware you are of it, and it moves up this chain. So at the bottom here, when a trend starts, and trust me, where it starts and where it goes are never, ever what you think, ever. So if it starts, it's emerging. There's no term for it, there's no acronym, there's no bucket to put it in. It's the crazy idea in the conference room. It's the guy who's always brainstorming that you want to shut up, right? It's the guy in the garage. It's the person no one's really investing in because they can't figure out what that business model is because it doesn't exist, That's emerging. And then we move up here, we're framed, right? Now we've got a box that we're going to put it in. We can figure out a box. We've got an acronym. There's many players. Someone's investing. Money's being thrown at it. There's brands. Stuff's happening. We're talking about it in the press. Blogs are picking it up, right? You're forming task forces to check it out, right? People are talking about it at cocktail parties, and you act like you know what they're talking about, right? It's like blockchain 5 years ago. Oh, yes, blockchain, yes. And then we move it up to mainstream, front of a magazine. You better know about it because you're hiring staff for it now, right? There are companies, they're public, it's all over the place. And then it's resolved. Then it's resolved. There are definitely public companies. People are figuring out how to game the system. There's lobbyists. People are going to jail. That's what happens there, right? People are going to jail, period. You know you've plateaued. So why do you care? Right? How do you know this is happening to you? So I'll give you a very personal but rudimentary example to kind of bring it back, right? Theory, and let's put it into action. Here's the deal. So 2004, you got your Harvard Alumni magazine, right? Every one of your kids was going there, and they talked to you about this thing. Face Mash, it became Facebook at the end of the year. There were almost 1 million people on it. It wasn't really called social media yet, right? It's all emerging at this point. No companies are public. Someone went into their boss and said, we got to get on this thing. I can feel it, right? Weak signal, I'm ahead of the curve. I don't know what to call this, but we really should be ahead of it. And the boss said, I agree, but get back to work, we got to make our numbers, right? Happens all the time. Now we move it up, right? Up, we're emerging. TechCrunch is following it. There are 6 million people on it now, 6 million. The main player is MySpace. The anti is Facebook, right? Companies are going public. It's called a platform now. There's a bucket to put it in. Keep moving up. Oh, cover of a magazine. Cover of a magazine. Right? This is when grandma or mom friends you on Facebook. It's that moment right there, right? And this is where it goes. The Supreme Court or whatever country in your high court, they're now ruling on business decisions of using this data. So at the beginning you thought, oh, this is going to be about social media. Nope, it's not that. Oh, this is about big data. Kind of. It's really more about unstructured, and it's more about, remember the Fitbit? Thoughts and feelings. Unstructured things, the next frontier. How much are your thoughts and feelings worth? Who will get them when you die? And this is where it's going, right? How much are they worth? Mine's worth more than yours, right? I'm smart. Come on, mine are worth a lot more. Who determines that? How does it work? Here's what you care about. What you care about is, down here, this is where you're influencing the change. Right? You have power to influence. This is guardrails stage. Up here, you're taking orders. So you, as consultants, as the people that are doing solutions, where are you playing internally with your teams and as a company? And how are you doing for your clients? Are you always up here? Yep, taking orders. You need a solution, I got one for you. Or are you down here? You know, we got a business model revolution. You should be about healing in your cars, not just about mobility. Right? Energy, it's not just about extracting it, it's growing it. I don't know, but you know what I mean. Okay. So that's something to think about. Where do you usually play? Because what it comes down to, guys, personally, it always comes back to personal. With complexity, with risk, it's about risk and fear, right? What is the risk tolerance? What fear is holding people back? Fear often tied to assumptions. Okay. So here's what I think holds you back. Complexity, and with the people that work for you, complacency, right? The 2 evil C words. So I do all this research. I work with my teams. How do we overcome change? A lot of it has to do with people have too much complexity, right? That stuff that just puts a chokehold on us. Meetings, reports, policies, emails, those things we put in place to control things, risk, fear, power, control. And then the result is people they just kind of get tired of swimming like a salmon upstream. They don't want to fight it anymore, right? What we have is just fun. Let's just go with the status quo, and that's where that settles in. And I'll tell you, I'm going to get to one of the exercises I'm going to recommend to you. We just did this yesterday with a very large oil company, and it was interesting. That was experiencing extreme complacency, right? Yes, they're very complex, and you can talk to me all day long about whatever insert here industry you work in that has extreme risk and compliance. Congratulations, you're like everyone else, and there's someone in that industry that can figure out how to simplify things, right? No matter what industry it is, pharma's got it harder than oil's got it harder than financial services, got it harder than defense, and blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean. But there's ways that we can get around this stuff. And we went down, this was a few years ago, we went down to Raleigh. And it was a very, very large multinational manufacturing company. And they said, I want you to bring your futurists down. I want you to talk to me about the future of manufacturing. Right? We've got a lot of complexity here. We've got to figure out the future, who we're becoming. Well, that's great. I bring down a team of 7 people. We're going to be there all day. We're going to talk about the future of. I'm going to kick it off, and then my guys are going to do some exercises. I'm about a half hour into this session, 50 people from this company, largest business unit within the company, top guys, all in a nice conference room like this, talking about the future. 30 minutes into it, I'm having the worst session of my life. They hate me. They're not paying any attention to me. All the nonverbals are checking their phone, going out to the bathroom, you know, like this, talking to each other. I am literally going down in flames. It was the worst presentation ever. And I thought, okay, what am I going to do? You know, 30 minutes in, I got a full day to fill. My whole team is here watching me. It's completely embarrassing. And so, you know, I'm 45 minutes into it at one point, and I said, you know what, why don't we take a break? This is a lot to digest. You know, I'm talking, but I'm not even listening to what I'm saying because I'm just trying to figure out what to do. And we take a break, and I'm really just very concerned. Right? I don't know what to do. And so I come back, and I see one of the senior guys there, and I said, can I talk to you for a minute? We really have to change what's going on. He said, what do you mean? And I said, well, nobody's buying what I'm saying. And he said, oh, no, it's fine. And I thought, what is he talking about? He said, it's not that people don't want to change. It's that we really, to be honest, in our culture, we no longer feel we can really affect it. And I thought, oh, my God, if this is the senior person right in the largest unit, and he's saying, you know what, this status quo is just kind of what we do. Don't worry about it. We're just kind of here to check a box. What am I going to do the rest of the day? So I get everybody back together, and we rearrange the group, these 50 people, into kind of functional groups, right? So we get like functional and business unit. We got rocketry, we got golf carts, we've got procurement, we've got legal, we've got marketing. You get the idea. So in their small groups, I said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to shake it up. We're going to do a completely new exercise. And everyone looks at me, and I said, we are going to kill your company. And it was like everybody, you know, lighters are going off. You know, everyone's finally engaged. They're excited. So I didn't even have to explain it. They were all ready to go. I said, tell me who your number one competitor is. Decide within your group. You know, if you're procurement or legal, it might be you're jealous of another company's legal team, right? I wish we were GE. I wish we were Lockheed. I don't know what it is. And if you were an actual business unit, tell me what other company you wish you were or what you're really jealous of. You'd want to go work there. They figure out who this is. And I said, now pretend you're that competitor. Wear that hat. You've got an hour. I want you to kill your company. I want you to do everything you can to put your company out of business. The room was on fire. I mean, they couldn't get enough of it, right? What are the scenarios for change? What are all the stupid things that we do that we just let go on and on and on because we're being so politically correct, right? We never let these projects die. What should we divest? What are the groups we should be working with better to have shared services? You get the idea. And it went on and on, an hour, 2 hours. Suddenly it's 2 o'clock, and the leader finally called it. We have so many ideas, we now have to parse them down and figure out which ones are we really going to attack, like quick wins and then longer ones, and then which ones are we going to turn back on our competition. Like it was such a simple thing, giving people permission to get rid of that they had never done before, right? Give them an out-of-company experience. So, you know, I have to say, now they do that every year. And Kill the Company becomes the precursor to strategic planning, right? Because strategic planning is, the joke I have is how you usually start your strategic planning is you take out last year's PowerPoint deck, right? You open it up and you change the date and you save it, and now it's begun, right? Now it's strategic planning. But this is, how do we really methodically think about what's not working so we can really make that presentation better? So let's think about this. If you went back to your groups that you all run, and you said, I want to kill the company, either with your group, right? I've talked about this with Liz before at Microsoft, by the way, and we've done a few of these exercises, and trust me, if you ask her, she'll tell you, it works great. It works great. But you gotta be strong like Liz. You gotta stand up there and be strong about killing your group or killing your company. How would you do it with your group? What would they say you need to kill in your group, or change or get rid of? Or if you did it with your client, how would that work? It's very cathartic. Could you do it with them? Okay? So let me tell you a little bit about, if you try it with your client, what's the pushback going to be? What's the human element? Because I think it's very human, right? Here's the thing. The first is, I think we have this thing where more is better. I don't know many people that are rewarded for doing less or rewarded for doing more. More is better, more is more valuable. Right? Clients want more, not less. Isn't that right? The second thing is managing, not leading. I think a lot of companies right now are not grooming leaders. They're grooming people to either manage the day-to-day, I think you said putting out fires, right? Or they're grooming professional skeptics. They're really good at having people that are great at telling me what the risk is, but they have a very hard time taking one. But we got to innovate, we got to change, pivot to the new. And then the final thing is doing overthinking. Right? Doing overthinking. So this addiction to this execution. I mean, if you think about it, if you went to go see your colleague, so you're going to go visit your colleague, Steve. You go to the office. There's Steve, and he's sitting in his chair, and he's just looking out the window, smiling, just smiling. You go, hey, Steve, what are you doing? He said, oh, I'm just thinking. What's the first thought that pops into your mind? Right? Get back to work, right? He's lost it. But I wish I had time to do that, right? So what holds us back from doing this, right? What holds us back? So this is interesting. In the past 15 years, the data has shown that the number of procedures, governing bodies, layers, decision approvals has increased anywhere from 50 to 350%. And the more you are in need of compliance, the more regulated you are, you're on that higher end of the scale, obviously. Usually those are the people that are in defense, pharma, finance. But what about the day-to-day, guys? The day-to-day. How do employees spend their day? 45% of their time in meetings. Right? 23% doing email. I actually thought this would be reversed. Did anyone else have that reaction? Yeah? You said no? I said yes? That's exactly right. Well, what was funny is I went back and I looked at the data, and the data was, this is only during business hours. Yeah, now everyone's like, oh, well, that explains it. Yes. 18% is unproductive work. Some of that is the time you spend walking between meetings, I understand. And then 14% for getting real work done. That's not a lot of time. Right? How do we change this, right, to get real thinking done? So this is where we get into the need for eradicating that complexity. Because if we're spending our time in low-value work in the mundane, we can't get to the meaningful, right? And the clients pay for meaningful, not mundane. So what does it mean? So first of all, let's think, why should we simplify? Now I'm going to just throw this out, guys. Easy question, why do we simplify? Why should we do it? Makes things easier, get more done, sure. Hopefully get more valuable things done. Yep. What else? Clarity. Hold that thought. Yes. Clarity. What else? Stop the rat race, right? This groove versus a rut. Yep. Anything else? More satisfying. Retention. Okay, hold those thoughts. Those are great. So even the data will show, why should simplicity become an operating principle? Right? Why should you be given not just permission, but you should be held accountable for making things simpler? First of all, with customers, clients in this instance, there is a likelihood that they will pay it's said between 6 to 10% premium if it's easier to do business with you or the operations of doing business with you are easier. Just easier, I'll just pay a premium for it. No problem. Thank you, right? It's like the Geico answer. They're 70% more likely to recommend you. Right? They're elated, right? This is very personal and emotional for them. And they've outperformed, there are 2,500 companies in the index. They outperformed the companies. This is stock price-wise, financial-wise, 214%. Right? They get more things, meaningful things done. Okay, employees. This is interesting, right? Imagine going and working at a place every day where you did meaningful work, right? I work the way I want to. I'm not stuck in meetings and emails. You're more effective and it's less wasteful, of course. Those are the easy things. Less waste, more time for meaningful work. But what would you do with that time? That's an interesting thought experiment. And you're 30% more likely to stay. And I have to say with culture, what's really interesting is I think we spend all our time on cultural aesthetics. Right? Colorful walls, and we've got electronics, and we've got large screens, and we've got, in a lot of the startups, we've got beanbag chairs, and we've got organic food. That is really important, and it is definitely a factor. But at the end of the day, at some point people will leave, even with all those things, if they're not doing the meaningful work, right? And then finally, and this is really for you all, because I'm going to talk about why complexity happens. A lot of times it's an operating principle because it's out of respect for each other, right? People don't get mad, really, enough when people waste our time. We get really upset when people waste our money. Why are we not more upset when people waste our time? Really, right? Why are we not more upset about it? So how do we actually start operating with ourselves so other people operate the way we want them to and not waste our time? Okay, so how do we simplify? What is simplicity? You know it when you see it, right? What does it mean to be simplified? You said one of the words, actually. Clarity. Clarity is one. What else? Easy. Good. Essential. Fast. Speedy. What else? Any other words come to mind? Focus. Great. Right? To the essentials. Anything else? Say it again. Understandable. Great. And I put that with the clarity part. Exactly. So here's what was really interesting when I was doing the research for my book. This is over the last couple of years. I can show you reams of research reports on complexity. I can show you very little on simplicity. And I thought that was fascinating. It was one of those, well, it's kind of the opposite of complexity. And it was hard to come to a really simple definition. So I'm going to give you mine, and then I'd love to get your feedback. Here are the points. First of all, it's as minimal as possible. Right? That's that streamlined, focused, etc. Right? Down to the essence, as minimal as possible. By the way, you can oversimplify. Right? The people that take 100-page contracts and turn it into one page, but then you need to give a 10-page explanation for what all the definitions in the one page mean. Right? I like to say IKEA is a great example of that. Very simple, but they should offer marriage counseling, I think, with their instructions. Right? Understandable, that's the other one. It was really interesting because most people, when they define simplicity, they think about getting rid of, right? Streamlining. And I think it's unfortunate that that's the only thing people think of, because the bigger one is understandable and clear. Because we are in a world now where it's all bullet points, acronyms, right? When we shorten things, we use jargon a lot. And the reason people use jargon, often it's unintentional, but sometimes it's intentional complexity. I want to sound smart so I can protect my job. Right? It's human nature. Right? Those are common things. It's power. Repeatable. Right? This gets into, yes, custom can be very good, but how custom does it need to be? And some things can be complex, right? But they don't have to be, but they can be repeatable. What do I mean by that? When you go into the cockpit of an airplane, right, you don't want anybody to fly it. Of course, somebody who is trained needs to fly it. But every cockpit they go in, it should be repeatable. They shouldn't have to relearn the plane, right? And then finally, accessible. This is an interesting point about simplicity. Are you making it as transparent and open as possible? Some things illegally you should not share. That's what I mean by as possible. But by sharing more information, how can we have other people either do the work or understand better what we're trying to do? And this is the biggest one that is intentional complexity. I don't want to make it accessible because I want to be smart. Anyone have a comment on definition?
So I have one.
Please.
You've obviously given us a lot of thought, put a lot of time into this. Use the microphone now.
Do we have one there? We do.
You're saying you've obviously put a lot of thought into this and a lot of time into this. Where would you put agility in
simplicity?
In this topic? I mean, if I think about agility, simplicity allows you to be more agile than not. Right?
My feeling on that is it's a result, right? Especially when it comes to minimal, right? So I can move faster if there's less crap to get through. That's where a lot of people think that's where the streamline. But it's to say, if I can't understand it, that bogs me down, right? If it's not repeatable, oh, I got to do it over again. I think it's affected in all those things. So I put agility and speed as a result of that.
Okay.
Anyone else? Please.
I wish we could take that concept and take it back to how we do sales, pricing, approvals.
You can.
We should
Please do.
put those 4 words up and send them to somebody who hears it though.
So, yeah. But the thing that's really important is that funny, we had stickers made of it too, because someone else asked us that. Because it's hard, because we were trying to come up with a definition of simplicity and it became all these different sentences and it's really hard to be simple. It really is, because human nature gets in the way. But if you can keep these things in mind and determine which ones are most important and try each of them with everything you do, that's great. Just add as possible. You don't want to overdo. Please. When it provides new perspective. Because yes, I'm going to build on that. To me, because it questions assumptions. Because most people say, we can't do that. We've tried that. You know the same things with new ideas. We can't do that. We tried that. Until someone does. And then, okay, let's give it a shot. As possible. That's great. Sorry.
So for your book, yes?
You're on.
Is it? No. Yes?
No, it is.
Oh, yeah, okay. For your book, there's an underlying premise of complexity creates safety, right? You put your layers of control over to make it safe, lower risk.
Yeah, all those things.
All of that.
It's many factors.
That's the logic, right? In your research, were you able to see whether that was a true or false assumption?
For the most part, it's true. Okay. It depends on, I'm going to get into this, if it's organizational or individual, and if it's intentional or unintentional. Yeah, it's more complex than I ever thought it would be. But a lot of it comes down to human nature. So that's what's interesting about it, which is you have the power to change it, but are you willing to do it? Right? Because that's the other thing. Everyone thinks everyone else is the problem, by the way. Which is funny, I have some of my staff here. Raise your hands, guys. True or false? Lisa can create complexity. True, right? True. So let's talk about that. So what are some warning signs of complexity? Now get ready. You might want to take pictures of this. There's 15 different things. I have more, but I thought I'd just shave it down to the essentials. What are some warning signs? Now I want you to think about this. There's 2 ways, right? With your clients, do you see it at your clients? Are these warning signs that they're becoming more complex? Or you can do it internally. And I've had people in the different markets I've done this for with Accenture do it both ways. And this is just you to see, all right, if you're thinking about this with your group, do I see some of these warning signs? You could literally tick this off a list. Or it's just absorb it and say, I didn't realize those were the warning signs. I would have picked some others. So let me walk you through this and tell you how I'm going from a top to bottom approach. So one of the first warning signs of complexity, it's external, right? Regulation and mandates, they're just increasing. I think you were very familiar with that with the groups that you work with, right? Of course. And this is where clients say, this is the excuse why I'm complex. Real and perceived. Externally, people start to say, God, you're so difficult to do business. I'm pulling my hair out. And you go, I know, it's just how we work. It's just how it's set up. And this gets more compounded the more multinational, the more global you are. Scale affects complexity, is one of the biggest factors. Scale. That's it. Because there's more humans to deal with. Time. Approvals and decisions. So now we got to start to mitigate risk. More people, more risk takers, more less common sense. Okay. more time's required. So still, this is decision making now. I will happily give you these slides, by the way, so you don't feel like you have to write everything down. Okay. Paperwork, or the number of people that need to be involved, right? Okay, a lot of that in compliance. Contracts and processes are longer. This especially happens when I'll show you later when we try and do a one-size-fits-all. Right? There's no workarounds. And by the way, when the workaround becomes more prevalent than the regular process, maybe the workaround should be the process. Frequency of new policies, like every day you feel like you're getting 5 new emails of a new policy that's just come out. Right? People feel inundated by policies. Okay, now we start to move into some other things internally. There's a disconnect and incompatibility in systems. Right? Scale, acquisitions, new offerings. This happens a lot with tech, obviously. Lack of standardization, lack of processes. We got to get this thing under control. One size fits all. That's one of those good or evil. I see this a lot in pharma, especially when people are trying to get in drug trials. Does everything have to be that much of a drug trial for just doing a little tweak to something? If it's a new usage for an already existing drug? Yes, they do. Repeated need for clarity. Why do we have to do this? Now we're getting into human nature, right? Can you explain? This is how we've always done it, right? That's just there for a reason. And the last ones, people stop fighting hard for things. Right, here we go. All those things lead up to this. I'm settling in. I'm strapping in. I'm not going to fight this anymore. New ideas are met with, whoo, tried it before. Right, status quo. We better consider the politics of this. Right, before you do a presentation, who you invite to something, how something gets handled, who sends out the email. You're excluded. Oh, we didn't invite you. I was told you couldn't come. And then the final one, the company's offering packages, and a lot of people are volunteering for it, right? No problem. Anyone surprised or would have added a different sign here? So they start external, right? Well, we've got, the first thing I always hear from people is, well, we're really regulated. And then it gets down to, oh my God, you should see how much time I spend in PowerPoint. Right? It goes from here to here really quickly. So what I'm getting at is there's organizational things, but there's other things as well. Do me a favor, you each should have a piece of paper on your table, and it looks like this. Can you find it for me? Piece of paper. Raise your hand if you don't have one, because we have some extras in the back. Piece of paper. Okay, and obviously have a pen if you can too. We are going to do a little experiment. We are going to play with these boxes. These are 4 equally sized squares with 3 squares blacked out in 3 of the quadrants. Okay, so they're 3 equal squares, not on my slide, but on your paper, with 3 squares blacked out. We are going to divide the white space in each square into different numbers of parts. And I'll walk you through it. We're going to do it quadrant by quadrant, and we're going to see how good you are at doing these logic puzzles. Okay? Here we are. Everyone's nervous and looking at their colleagues like, oh my God, I didn't have enough coffee. I didn't work out this morning. Okay, let's start with the upper right quadrant. Upper right quadrant. Let's eradicate some complexity here. Can you divide that white space into 3 equal parts? And by equal, I mean size and shape. 3 equal parts. Not with 1 line, just 3 equal parts. If you can do that, man. Whew. I heard you guys were type A. That's amazing. Overachieving. Okay. Everyone pretty confident that they have it? Anyone need some more time? There we go. Okay, 3 equal parts, size and shape. Let's go to this top left. Here we go, top left, 2 equal parts. It's 2. I'm confident that you probably got this one. Did you get that? Okay. Here we go. Let's do this one. This has been easy so far. 4 equal parts. Now let me remind you, because I know what you're going to do. Equal size and shape. Raise your hand when you get it. Size and shape. Not equal size. Not equal size. Same shape, not equal size. Let's see, ladies. Nope, not equal size. Not equal size. Yeah, Catherine, if you can see them too. Not equal size. If you got triangles, those are not equal sized triangles. Okay? Let's see. Okay, I'll give you just another minute. You're close, but it's not equal size. Not equal size. Oh, hint. The answer's right there. The answer's right there. Can you get him? Hold on, Catherine will come around and say. That's an annoying hint, isn't it? Anybody? Did he get it? I'm going to give it to you, okay, in the interest of time. Oh, there it is. See the 4 equal shapes? 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 equal. The same shape is shaded right there. The boo-boo. I tricked you. 4 equal. All right, we're building up to it. You ready? 7 equal parts. 7. Just that bottom right quadrant. Just the white part there, whole block. 7 equal parts. A few of you get it? Yeah? A few people got it? Over there, okay. I'm going to show you the answer. Oh, there it is. Or did you do it vertically too? Not that, okay, great. So why was that hard to get something that easy? What happened?
Overthinking it.
Anyone else? Overthinking, assumptions. This is a great example, as what can make you really great as a leader can make you really bad at simplifying things. Because we tend to think that big problems deserve very big answers. And even in a simple thing like this, we went from 2 to 3 to 4 to 7 to, oh, and it could have been like this. And a lot of us use 2 years of experience over and over and over again versus 20 years of collective experience. So how do we make sure that we don't fall on our assumptions and we constantly question things? The simple answer could be the best one. So where does complexity come from? This is what I wanted to show you. The first part, when I showed you those red flags, that's organizational complexity. That's basically I've got every big part of an organization where it's everywhere. And it manifests itself in different ways. But the bigger part, when I just did that 4-box, you as leaders, it's individual. It's things that we put in place to control those things. Meetings, reports, policies, procedure, decision making, how many decisions, and that is driven by this. That's really where it all comes from. Risk, fear, power, control, which ultimately leads to trust. So a lot of things that we have to ask ourselves, these become really personal questions as leaders, and that's why some of the training that you get that tends to be more the soft versus the hard is important, because it really helps you assess how much do you really trust people, how much power are you willing to give up, power and control, how much risk are you willing to take, and how can you stretch that over time. And I'm not saying everyone here should be a risk taker, but you should really assess honestly how much risk are you willing to take, and how can you methodically try and get comfortable and stretch it over time so your people can help you better, right, in terms of simplifying. Are you willing to give up goal? Okay. So let's get into how do we start that with our teams and with ourselves. And I'm just going to give you a couple easy things to do, and then I'm going to hand it over to a few questions because I'm almost done with time. Okay? We talked about killing your company. That's one thing you can start to do to really assess if you're willing to take a risk and what other people really think needs to change. That's a big one. The other thing you can start to do is really get better at asking questions. I will bet you that you are good at asking questions with your clients, but you could be better. I bet you are not as good at asking those same questions of your team. You're probably even worse about it in your personal life, right? The more closer it is to home, the worse we are, the more fear we have, right? So what are questions we can start to ask, and why is that important? What we as leaders think that we know how to do it. My team, who is sitting here in the back with me, a couple people, can tell you, even when I get stressed and I get in a meeting and I go, okay guys, all right, who's got an answer? Well, they really don't have one because it's a stupid question. How can I ask a better question to get a better answer? Here's why that's important for you all in terms of who you're becoming. I know you've had discussions on AI, and if you haven't, you will tomorrow, right? Machine learning and some AI. This is why this is important. In the future, asking the right question is more important than finding the right answer. You can get the answer to anything you want. Did you ask the right question? So when you think about it, right, Google's not a search engine. Google's an answer engine. 10 years ago, when you typed into Google, when is, and sorry for the pure North American reference, when is George Washington's birthday? It would give you pages with links to sites where you could find the answers. Now, when you type in the same question, Wikipedia dissertation, lots of answers, links with the answer right there that will take you to sites that you didn't expect because it knows what you will ask next. So are you asking the right question? How good are you at it so you can get better answers from your team for your clients, right? Ahead of the future. I want you to think about this. If you want to ask some killer questions, don't get into a meeting anymore and not have thought about what question to ask. Okay, who's got an idea? Who's got a solution? I don't blame your teams for being bored. Right? That's boring. What if you asked things like this? Okay, go extreme. If we had to give away everything we do right now for free, really, you get into a room, this is a great kill the company kind of question. Do it at the end of a status meeting, or just say we're going to have an hour together. Guys, we got to go back to Pierre, we got to come back with ideas. If we couldn't charge any more for anything we do right now, what else are we going to do? And you have to make it right now. The more extreme, the more it pushes people to actually do it. Bonus points if you ask them to give you ideas that would get you fired. That's always a twist, and it works well. Ideas that would get you fired. Next one. What question would you love to ask customers, clients, forgive me, or the employees that work for you, but you are too scared or embarrassed to ask it? I will tell you, that is one for the plane ride home. Don't show it to anybody. It's just for you. And the more nervous you are to write it down, right, say the words that are unspoken, the more likely it is that's the question you should ask. Psychologically, the more fearful you are of the question, that's the one that needs to be asked the most. Okay. You've just written a tell-all book about the organization. What secrets would you reveal? Right, that's your culture question. So I want you to think about this. Either these questions, which are just meant to provoke thinking, or come up with your own. I'm going to throw this out to my team here. Don't kill me, but when we get back, you can tell the rest of the guys. We have over 150 of these questions. We've collected them from all our clients. If you want us to give them to you, I'll give you my email at the end, and we will send you the killer questions that you can use just to get you started with your groups, because it's a muscle that's hard to get going, but once you do, it's really fun. Okay? All right, what killer question would you love to ask? Right? That'll start the people to think in simple ways, question assumptions. Okay. Here's the next one. Killing stupid rules. How many people here have a rule at work that they would love to kill? People are like afraid to raise their hand. Usually it's like people go like this, right? Yes. Listen, this is a really, really simple tool, killing stupid rules, because basically you're giving people permission to get rid of. People are scared and they will not do it unless you tell them to. Maybe your culture is different than every other culture I've come across, but unless you give people permission, they are afraid to do it. So part of that culture of simplicity is getting rid of stuff. So ask them, right? If you could kill or change any 2 rules at work that hold you back from rotating to the new, from innovating, from changing, from simplifying, what would they be? And how would you get rid of them? You are going to be shocked with what people come up with. Because some of them will be rules, many of them will not be. They will be assumptions. Oh, I thought we had to do it this way. They're things that haven't been around for a while. I've literally sat in meetings where somebody has looked at another person and said, who told you that was a rule? Right? We got rid of that a long time ago. But no one revisits it, right? Maybe rules, what we don't realize is a lot of things were good at the time, but they've outlived their time. They've outlived their time. So I'll tell you one quick story. This was at Merck. I love this. I've done a lot of work with Merck, and this was with Ken Frazier and his top, how many people in the room? 300. This is part of like an ELT program, and we get in the room and we do kill a stupid rule. Now I have to tell you, and you all know this because you work with a lot of executives, but I get to work with a lot of CEOs as well, and there are very few of them that want to do this exercise. They want other people to do it, but they don't want to do it. And so this was an example where he said, I'd be happy to do kill a stupid rule. Because when you do kill a stupid rule, you have to kill some rules. Because otherwise you're a big, huge jerk. Right? So you're asking people to give you rules, be prepared to kill some, or at least pilot getting rid of them. So we're in the room and we ask everybody for rules. What would you change? These are those top guys, right? Everyone takes time, everyone has to write down 2 rules. So technically, 300 people, 2 rules, a lot of redundancies. So say there's about 200 unique rules. That's a lot of rules, right, that we can get rid of right away to simplify. And he says, you know what, let's do this. I want you to put your top one that you really want me to kill on a Post-it note, right? Just write it down. And we're going to put it up here on this 2x2, because everybody loves a 2x2. So this is how easy or hard it would be to implement that change, right? How easy or hard it would be to really get rid of it. Let's think about that. And how much impact would it have on the business, low or high? So if you're up here in the right quadrant, right, it's easy to get rid of this rule. It would have a high impact, you define what that means, on the business. Happiness, culture, money, whatever, stock price. So everybody stands up, right? Oh, all the rules go up there. Where do most of the rules land? Top right quadrant, great, quick win, extravaganza. So most of the rules, and this is very common, every single time you do this exercise, everything, it's either all on this side or all on this side, depending on how regulated or how difficult the culture is, to be honest. So most of the stuff ends up here. And this is brilliant. We get up there, we're putting things into different clusters. You know, a lot of it's like IT, a lot of it's marketing, a lot of it's legal, all this contracts, this kind of stuff. But the brilliant moment comes when all of a sudden he turns around and he looks at the group. And we've prioritized things. Everyone's, woo, lighters going off again. Everyone's excited. He looks at the group and he said, what I love about this is you guys came up with, you know, a couple hundred things we could take care of right now. Quick wins, I love this. Right? Most of the stuff you came up with, easy to implement, right, and would have a high impact that's incredible. Here's my question to you guys. Why haven't you done this? Right? That brilliant moment where everyone's like, right? And it was an awkward pause because, of course, it's that moment of accountability. It's really easy to bitch up. But how do you get people to actually take accountability of, oh, I didn't know I could do it. It was like this assumption of, well, I thought I had to get 1 million permissions. They are the senior guys. So he charged everybody, right? I want you to go back. I want you to do this with your teams, and I want you to kill rules. And it's become a part of their culture in different business units, right? So giving permission to people to get rid of. So think about this. If you went back to your team, what rules would they come up with? And if you did it with your client, what rules would they come up with? So just to show of hands, out of curiosity, how many people here could kill a stupid rule with their teams? People could? How many people will do it with their teams? Yeah, okay. Talk to Liz about it. We did this with Liz. It was on fire. Yeah, actually, just a little note to self, Liz is in my next book about this exercise. She stood up there and it was crazy. She just started killing things and we were like, whoa, calm down. Like a lot of killing was going on in the room. But eradicating stuff, it takes a strong leader, right, to give permission and to show how the action needs to happen, and it sets the ball in motion. Really cool. Okay, and the last thing I'm going to leave you with, because I'm literally out of time, is how do we make this a habit? Right? How do we literally make this a habit? And I talk a lot about how do we make simplicity an operating principle? And why do I say that? So what is the new competitive advantage for people? right? It can be people, it's the people we hire, it's the things we offer. To be honest, it's a lot of how you work, because things are only going to get more change in the next 5 years. You got to offer new stuff that means solutions, which are probably going to mean more things. People don't want more, right? They want easier. Can you be that company that offers it to them, right? Everything doesn't have to be simple, meaning simple solutions, but it doesn't have to be complex. How can you make that your competitive advantage? People will pay more, they'll be more loyal to you, right? Your employees will stay, you'll respect each other and how you work. The real reason I bring this up, and there's a lot of research to show this, is people think that having an innovative culture are these things like the beanbag chairs, et cetera, but really culture is the work you do every day. That's it. Culture is the work you do every single day. And what work do you do every single day? Most of your clients will say meetings and emails, right? So if you get the work right, you get the culture right. So how do you actually create that culture where things are simplified and we can get rid of the mundane and focus on what's meaningful? That is the company that wins, right? So how can you make simplification a way that you do business every single day? Right? So let me leave you with this. How do you get to the work that matters? Kill the company. Ask some really provocative questions to make people start questioning assumptions, right? Kill some stupid rules. And this is my email here. Can you see that on the bottom? L. Bodell, that's my first initial and last name, at FutureThink. Write us, and we will send you either, I can send you the Kill the Company exercise so you know how to do it, or those questions just to get it started. Because it really is true, it's a use it or lose it. If you don't use things within 5 days psychologically, you will not try them. Right? So I want you to try and commit to doing one of these things right after. Please.
So to make this simple, is there anyone that doesn't want this?
You got it.
Thank you.
You absolutely got it. Points for simplicity right there. See, I told you I make things complex, don't I? Okay, great. So we'll make sure everybody here gets that. Does anyone have questions for me before I shuffle off on the exercises or anything about simplicity? Why it's important? Anyone? No? Okay, then I will simply say yes.
How realistic is simplicity?
How real?
How realistic?
Oh, very. Is it common? Okay, so is it common? No, because it's difficult to do, especially because people use excuses. Is it possible and people doing it? Yes. Let me forgot to tell you this, actually. So you know why I wrote this book? Because I had clients out of the blue calling us saying, hey, you guys are those simplicity people, right? Because we were doing all these workshops with really simple things rather than a 12-step program. And I said, well, I never really thought about it that way, but that sounds good to me. And they said, these are people like P&G, GE, Altria, J&J. They weren't small. They said, listen, we are drowning in complexity. These are some of their biggest units. Will you come in and do some of these simplification exercises for us? Because we are shaping a simplicity team. And 2 of those groups hired chief simplicity officers. Now, you can think what you want about that. Part of me goes, well, that might be creating a whole new ball of wax. But on the other hand, what was interesting about it is these chief simplicity officers, they were reporting either to the COO, which is probably the logical thing people would do, but one of them was reporting to the CHRO because they figured if they get the work right, they get the culture right, and they're going to hire and train better people. So I only share that because, look, either it's going to take off or it's not, but I feel like from the research I've seen, there's not a reason why people aren't going to want to embrace simplicity, and teams already are. Right? The numbers are there that supports the reason to do it beyond just like an efficiency exercise. Anyone else?
Is there a shining star example of a company that's very complex that's got much simpler?
Yeah, I actually interviewed a bunch of them. And the one that I really liked, and I feature, because they're in a boring industry, in a boring part of a boring industry, and they're regulated. It was a credit union. And what was interesting about them is they were just drowning in all these tech failures, tech implementation failures. And I won't say what some of the very large, bright ones were. And basically what happened was they decided, you know what we're going to do? We're going to take this on our own. And we're just going to decide to get rid of. And they talk about the process that they went through. A lot of it was using some Agile Scrum. Cleveland Clinic does an excellent job of it within some of their IT divisions. They're incredible. Interestingly, Merck Canada has done some really interesting things within that company. And I actually talked, one of the guys there, he just retired, his name's Jeff Spencer. He has a great part in the book where he talks about, the biggest mistake people have is they take on too much at once, right? We're going to simplify everything. Don't do that. Figure out what needs to be simplified and then attack it one at a time, because then you get ownership and you get focus. And guess what the number one thing was in Canada at Merck they decided to focus on first? Meetings. They are spending the next 6 months figuring out how to get the best meeting culture possible and to get rid of as many as possible before they move on to the next thing. Anyone else? Other thoughts? Okay. Go and simplify. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you.